So I've been doing a lot of reflecting on my journey overcoming my eating disorder. Now there are so many things I would have done different, and I made a hell of a lot of mistakes along the way, and this really delayed my progress. But it took 10 years, but I finally did it. I now consider myself to be permanently recovered, and that permanent is really, really crucial. And it's something that unfortunately is not very common with eating disorders. So studies have shown that as little as 20% of people achieve permanent recovery from their eating disorder. And then, recovery can be such a long process due to the complexity and also the individuality of eating disorders. Again, it's been shown that recovery can take between 2 to 7 years on average, and sometimes even longer, like in my case. Now, for me, as hard as that time was, I feel that I just learned so much about myself, my eating disorder, and the whole recovery process in general. And from this reflection, there are 10 vital lessons which I want to share with you today. All of these things, I feel that if I'd known a lot sooner, or even before I entered recovery, would have made the process so much easier and hopefully faster. 10 years was a long, long time. So I just want to share with you all of this information in case it can help you deal with things, get past your eating disorder, and get back to your real life quicker than you thought was once possible. Now, what I mean by responsibility, this is when we take 100% ownership for where we are in our lives and how now we decide we're going to move forwards. Now, the key thing here I really want to emphasize is that responsibility does not equal fault. Okay, they're two separate things. So I blame myself for my eating disorder for so many years, and I also felt so much guilt around what I was putting my family through and everyone around me. Now, all this did was sent me spiraling into this deep place of self-loathing, rather than motivating me and empowering me into recovery. So my message to you for this lesson is that your eating disorder, it's not your fault, okay? You just had to cope with whatever was going on in your life at that time in the best and only way you knew how at that time. It's not your fault. You were just trying to cope in the best way you knew how to. However, you now must take responsibility for where you are right now and make the commitment to yourself that things have to be different, okay? You've got to make that commitment to yourself that things must change and take responsibility for you guiding that process and getting you to where you want to be. Responsibility is the very first, most crucial step in the whole recovery process. Now, I have a little bit of an issue with the word recovery. So from personal experience, I've found trying to live up to some of the aspects of this really general recovery definition very overwhelming and so daunting. It was just way too much. Things such as you've got to find your purpose, you've got to challenge yourself, build ambition, personal growth. So personally, I have found that all of these things have made huge progress after I fully recovered, okay? So my message to you for this lesson is that recovery can mean different things for different people. So what I want you to focus on is you, your eating disorder, and what being fully permanently recovered would actually look like and feel like to you. Now, having this clarity will enable you to filter out anything that's not relevant to you, and this will actually help keep you focused and motivated because you know exactly where you're headed and actually is meaningful to you, your eating disorder, and your journey. And again, I remember feeling really overwhelmed. The amount of times I've said overwhelmed, that's quite a common thing in my journey, so it seems. Yeah, I remember also feeling really overwhelmed when trying to think like long term. You know, what's the long term goals? What do I want to achieve in the next year? You know, all that big picture stuff. And it actually made me pull away from recovery rather than encouraging me to lean into it. So as part of my journey, I actually learned quite a cool little thing about our minds, okay? So our minds cannot tell the difference between us getting to the top, the very peak of the mountain, which, you know, for any of us is fully recovered, permanently recovered. So getting to the top, turning around and thinking, yes, I did it, I'm there. So it can't tell the difference between that and us walking 2 steps up the mountain and again turning around and going, yes, I did it. It cannot tell the difference, okay? So my message to you for this lesson is to start small, all right? Start setting yourself really small but realistic and achievable goals, things that you know and you feel that you can achieve at that time. It can be something as small as, just for today, I'm going to eat breakfast. As small as that. And this will just help begin to nudge you in the right direction. And over time, lots of these little goals, completing and winning these little goals, will just build your confidence and keep you walking step by step up that mountain. Remember, you do not need to get to the top all in one go. Your brain cannot recognize the difference. So start small. Now, unfortunately, my recovery was really impacted by my chronic illness that I've got called EDS, or Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which severely impacts my entire digestive system. So at that time, what I did was I chose to focus on just managing my EDS, okay? And that actually delayed me from getting the right help for my eating disorder. And I just didn't appreciate that they did have such a huge effect on each other. And it was until I addressed this that I spent way too long in denial and refusing to get help. So my message to you for this lesson is that other issues and challenges may arise, and that is absolutely normal and very common with eating disorders. But it's really important that you are aware of these other factors, whether that's anxiety, depression, anything physical, anything that could impact your recovery. And this is when you need to work even more closely with your therapist, your family, your support system to ensure that you're still making the progress that you need. Oh God, throughout my journey, I had tried everything. I tried CBT, counselling, psychology, psychiatry, which helped to some extent, and I made some progress, but on the whole, I still felt stuck. I still had my eating disorder like sitting on my shoulder, always in the background. Now, unfortunately, there's no current consensus about what treatment works with eating disorders, because they're so complex and personal, which makes finding the right treatment really difficult. And also, if something's not working, it's really hard to know where to go next. Like, I remember sticking with psychotherapy, for example, for 9 months, and knowing every time I came away from those appointments, I felt worse and things were getting worse, but I just didn't know what else to do. So my message to you for this lesson is just to have a look at your current treatment plan, what approaches you're using, what support you've got. And I found it really helpful when I started rating my satisfaction out of 10. And anything less than a 5, I knew that something was missing and something wasn't working. So you've got to be looking at these things and asking yourself, okay, what is working with what I'm doing? What isn't working? And what's missing that would be helpful and encourage me to progress faster? Now, I started looking outside the traditional treatment approaches, outside the standard approaches, to something that was a bit more holistic and outside the norm. Because you've got to understand, you may actually need to combine approaches and build a support team, or even change approaches altogether in order to get the help that's right for you. And again, I keep saying this, eating disorders are very personal. So it's got to be your recovery, your way. And I found that I wish if something wasn't working and I'd stuck it out and given it my all, I wish I would have looked for something else and tried something else a lot sooner than I did. If something isn't working, there are always other things you can try. There is always another option, but it may just require you looking outside the standard approaches. So yeah, there were some real shitty days in recovery. Those days where you were just totally and utterly consumed by everything eating disorder. But coming out the other side, what I've learned is that what we focus our attention on, that focus actually feeds the energy and keeps it alive, okay? So on those days when I was trying to focus on food, controlling my emotions, managing my thoughts and feelings, it just made everything feel a whole lot worse because that's where I was directing the attention on anything to do with my eating disorder. So my message to you for this lesson is that on those real shitty hard days, just be slightly more selective in your focus and just try to give your mind a little bit of a break from anything eating disorder. So what you can do is just shift and focus on activities, places, people that are not linked to your eating disorder. Anything that you can do or experience or people you can talk to that bring you good feelings. Because these are also the things that we want to grow and feed and make stronger. So once I had set those goals for myself, no matter how tiny or short term they were, I found that I had to keep bringing my awareness and attention to what I wanted to achieve. I had to keep bringing it back to those goals. Now, I learned that in our minds, we have a system called the reticular activating system, or RAS for short. Now, this system helps us to filter out the huge amount of information that floods our brain every second of the day. And it helps us to filter out and find what is most important. Now, the more you decide to focus on the good things, what you're looking to achieve and your goals, the more that these will show up by way of your RAS. It's the RAS that is the important thing here. So my message to you for this lesson is that, I know, I get it. It's so easy to get caught up in the eating disorder, all your thoughts and your feelings, your emotions, food, diet plan. It becomes very easy to forget on the things that we're actually working towards, the end goal, the solution. And we find it very easy to come up with reasons why we can't achieve our goals rather than the reasons why we can. So your point of focus will determine the thoughts that occupy your mind. I'll say that again. Your point of focus will determine the thoughts that occupy your mind. So if you choose to focus on the reasons why you can recover, you will find them. They will show up by case of your RAS. So it's a very simple little switch. If you're feeling that overwhelm, those days that are really hard, focus on the goals, focus on all the reasons why you want to recover. That is very key. The more you're doing that, the more if you're focusing what you want, your RAS will be filtering out all the things and all the reasons which are holding you back and keeping you stuck. Wow, I spent so many years looking outside of myself for solutions to fix me, and I was just trying to control people, places, situations, everything in my external world. Now, unfortunately, this was bloody exhausting, and all it did was just take away even more of my strength and power. Now, I believe I started making real, true progress was when I stopped focusing on the external and everything going on around me, and instead made a commitment and decided to start resolving my inner emotional challenges and issues first. in something I now call inside out recovery. So my message to you for this lesson is that I know how exhausting it can feel trying to manage yourself, your thoughts, your behaviors, other people, controlling your environment and situations, everything. And that's okay. I just want you to be kind to yourself. Now, it's really important that you take some time for you, okay? And start to bring your focus back on you and work out whatever it is that is going on under the surface, any of these emotional challenges and issues and beliefs you have about yourself, and work on resolving them and building your inner strength first. Before then, you're able to even contemplate dealing with the outside world. You are number one priority, so all the changes has got to come from you first, from this inside out approach rather than outside in. That is just draining and exhausting. It's time to build up your strength and build up your power, so then you're better equipped to deal with the outside world and cope with whatever is thrown at you. And whilst I was still making some progress during my recovery, there was still a part of me that still felt stuck and totally controlled by my eating disorder. It was like I just couldn't escape it. But I've now learned that 90% of our daily behavior is being driven by our subconscious mind. So this is the part of our mind that is responsible for our habits, our pre-programmed behaviors, our values, our beliefs, and identity. And because I had my eating disorder for such a long time, I began to realize that it had in fact been stored at a subconscious level. And what was driving it was this deep-rooted limiting belief which went way back into my past, this belief that I was not enough. So my message to you for this lesson is that if a part of you still feels stuck and that you're not making the progress that you would like in your recovery, just take some time and do some self-exploration to really start to dig a little bit deeper and get to all those core things that could be driving your eating disorder and keeping you stuck. So this is the question that I ask myself to try and get right to the root of the problem and discover what it is that is driving my eating disorder behaviors. So if there was something that you believed about yourself that was at the root of your eating disorder and all its problems, what would it be? If you could begin that with I or I am, just ask yourself that question and just see what's the first thing that comes into your mind. It might surprise you. And finally, coming out of the other side, finally, one of the biggest realizations I think I had was that everything I did in recovery, it came from within me. It all came from within me. Like, I was the one who had to step up, do the work, and make all the changes. Yeah, it was really good to have the support of my therapist and family and everyone else, but I was the one who actually had to make the changes. So my message to you is that although you may not know it now, you already have everything you need, all the qualities, the strength, and the resources you need to be completely and permanently free from your eating disorder. It is all within you. And going through the recovery and coming out the other side will just help you to build an even bigger toolbox, which is going to help you be able to navigate through life and cope with whatever life throws at you. You know, if you can do this, then that's going to show you that literally you can do anything you set your mind to. And that's how it felt for me. I was like, oh my God, like I managed to get past the biggest obstacle in my life. And if I can do that, then literally everything else is gonna be easy in comparison. That's what it felt like. So if you can do this and it all comes from within you, then that will give you that confidence and that strength to think, yeah, anything is possible now. I can literally do anything because you can. So yes, I consider myself to be completely, fully, permanently recovered, however you want to call it. But the thing is, I am not done with growing, because I believe that we're all just constant work in progress, always evolving as we go through life. As you know, we're human, it's part of being human. But for me, beating my eating disorder, it was only the beginning, it was just the start. Now, what it did was that it gave me the freedom to find my voice and tap into that power I had really deep inside of me, to be able to create the life that I'd always wanted. And it gave me this ability to have the vision and build some ambition for what I wanted my life to be like. And this was something that I could not even contemplate when my eating disorder was literally crushing me and sucking all the energy out of my true self. And now I feel that because I've got past, the biggest obstacle I've ever had in my life, I now feel unstoppable. I feel that literally anything is possible. And that's what I really want to get across to you, is that if you see your eating disorder as this huge signpost, this huge thing, whereby once you overcome it, oh my God, you get this rush, this feeling that you can do anything. And if I can do it, then you can. So I hope all of that was helpful. And please comment any queries or questions, and actually just let me know, what have you found helpful in your recovery journey? What are some of the really key things that you've learned? Just let me know.